As we've discussed before, one of the things that clinicians very much value in electronic health records is the speed of their system. And this post wants to look at the fact that there are two very different sources of slowdowns in EHR systems. As I've said before many times, clinicians often are talking about how quick or how slow their EHR is. Generally, it's too slow. And their complaints are usually quite well founded because often the introduction of that EHR may slow down their previous paper-based workflows. And the purpose, as I said, of this post is to point out that the slowdown of their workflow might be due to two very different issues related to the EHR. And I think too often these two separate issues get lumped together into one single category. And that's not as helpful because you need to know which group to talk with when you're trying to optimize these issues. So the issues are related to either the software or related to the implementation. So on the software side, you might have issues related to the user interface design, or the ability to customize the software to different workflows, or how easy the software is to learn, or ways that that software has been optimized in a technical way to deliver a faster page load, for instance, by preloading information and anticipates that the user wants, or ways that the software has been optimized, again, on a technical side to make it more robust, such as if the internet connection drops. This is a very separate category of issues related to the actual implementation of that tool and its deployment and integration into care. In this second category, we look at things such as our new fields or our new mandatory fields being added to forms. What devices does the software run on? And how is the software being used to replace existing clinical workflows? Often the organization that is responsible for building the software is different from the organization which is implementing it. And that's why I think it's helpful to separate these into the two different buckets. Many of the criticisms clinicians have about their EHR are a result of issues both related to the software and to the implementation. For instance, the administration and the management committees often add many new mandatory fields and new forms that did not exist on paper when they move to an electronic healthcare record. Sometimes new mandatory fields are not added, but a field might have been mandatory on a paper form, but everyone just skipped over it. Whereas when you move to a digital system, you can't skip over that field, even if the practice was for everyone to skip it. And so clinical slowdowns from this category of causes are not the fault of the software, but it's how it's being implemented. And so solving them really requires consultation and conversation between the clinical staff and the administration who's configuring the system. This does not let EHR vendors, though, off the hook. In my opinion, EHR vendors too often attribute poor clinical satisfaction with the EHR to bad implementations. And it is true that certainly bad implementations can make the software even worse, but as we've seen in survey after survey, clinicians raise the actual poor user interface of the software itself as a problem with the modern medical record. And many EHR systems also don't do other things such as preloading data to increase the speed of the clinical work, or optimizing for offline functionality, or optimizing for pre-population of data. And so I think that a well-built software can certainly make the system, the whole EHR as itself, much more robust against implementations. And even if the implementation might be not as well done, if you have a really well-built piece of software, it can be more flexible in the way that you deploy it into different clinical environments. And so why is this important? Well, what I would like to do is to develop a very comprehensive list of all the factors that can affect the EHR speed. And this is important because if we're trying to build an EHR that clinicians eagerly choose to use over paper, it's important that the system is blazingly fast, or at least I'm assuming that this is a critical factor in the system. And this comprehensive document of all of the known factors that affect EHR usability speed will be helpful because this could be reviewed to try to identify which of these factors probably have the highest impact on speed performance in clinical real-life work, and which ones can we tackle and fix first with the least amount of effort in order to address those. So if you're interested in this, please go to, of course, the link to the Google document, which is available on this blog post on gregoryschmidt.ca, and contribute. The comments should be fully enabled on the document. And yeah, EHR speed, I think, is probably one of the top issues. And it's a complicated issue too, because it's very much an aggregate, as you'll see when you open that Google document, of a number of very technical factors related to the software and its optimization, as well as to a number of implementation factors on how the software is being used. But if we don't fix this issue, it'll be very tough to deliver immediately valuable benefits to the clinical users using the system if the system is always going to be slower and lag behind their paper-based workflows.